You've given me the honor to lead this, but I think, like the audience, I'm also sitting here to learn just like all of y'all, because these topics are so complex, and I think each person here is so in depth into their field. We as regular, ordinary beings, of course, we are specialists in our own regard, but here I just feel very happy that I'm here myself to learn, and the questions that I'm asking, I've read their books, and yet the questions that I'm asking are so focused on, I really want to know. So I think this is like a personal chat with me sitting there, and I'm not even thinking about the audience, but bear with me, I am with y'all, and I'm hoping that the questions that I ask would be interesting enough for you too. So I want to begin with the most complex person on stage, and everyone is looking at him. Okay, so that is Mr. Mrittunjoy. And, all of us are aware of Atman is ourselves, okay? And so when we are combining physics and spirituality as a concept, and we're learning from the master here, so my question, if Atman or the self is the center, okay, we're talking about the center of reality, that means I am the observer and the doer. So it's breaking those lines, somewhere that boundary is being broken. So what is consciousness really? And I want to hear from him, if the physical world is so probabilistic per your theory, so what exactly, where does consciousness stand there?
Right, thank you for that. Complex as it may be, but I hope to today discuss about this very rather interesting and relevant topic of discussion as it stands. So physics as we know it, has been about finding the truth that there is in the universe, in the nature of reality, so to say. And in the 20th century, we had this revolution, the quantum revolution, which brought about a lot of changes in the way we saw nature itself. And it was seen that nature was fundamentally probabilistic, as you just mentioned, and it also happened to have a certain interface with this concept of measurement, right? This concept that what you see and how you see it actually affects the way things evolve in terms of the nature of reality itself. Now, the point here is that is in the 1950s tak, okay? So let me just kind of put in a kind of spanner into the works. That's not the theory as it stands today. Right? This whole idea that consciousness as it was understood in Wigner's day, there's a person called Eugene Wigner and Wheeler and various others who came about in the 1940s and 50s, things have moved forward from there, right? So we have this idea that nature itself does still have this measurement problem, right? How you observe nature defines how nature moves forward, but it's not by the consciousness as in the human neurocentric consciousness as we know it. It is more about the interaction of the system with its environment, if you will, right? And but does that mean that consciousness has gone out of the window? Not quite, right? Consciousness as we know it today, right, when we talk about the models of consciousness in today's world, has dramatically changed, right? We have this idea of integrated information theory, right, which was given by an Italian physicist by the name of Tononi, right? So he said कि हमारे सब चीज़ों में there is a certain amount of information we get from it, right? Anything that we have, any form, any structure, right, any functionality, there is some information about it. If we were to bring that all together and integrate that, right, is there a degree of consciousness that we can construct with that, for instance, right? So everything has become very information centric and everything has become very relational. हम कैसे relate करते हैं अपने environment के साथ, for instance, right? So again, it goes back to the point that physics and consciousness have again come back to the same point, which is that nature is fundamentally information centric and nature is fundamentally relational as well. Right? So now to just touch upon the point you mentioned about Atman, right? So Atman, I've had a lot of discussions and I had the privilege of representing the Ramakrishna mission at the United Nations a couple of years back. And there, the idea that Atman or consciousness is actually in the physical world, right, is not quite all the way what Vedanta says, for instance, right? It kind of has a certain kind of degree of separation, if you will. However, given that I have written about Trika Shaivism, Trika Shaiv Darshan, for those of you who are not familiar with Trika Shaiva Darshan, it is Kashmiri Shaivism, right? It's a form of Shaivism that came up in Kashmir, and it is not often discussed upon, but it has a lot of concepts and ideas, especially to do with non-dualism, to do with interconnectedness of things, which are very important in today's age and time, right? So we see a lot of binaries in today's age, right? This conflict of us versus them, for that matter, right? How do we reconcile that is something that Kashmiri Shaivism says, and it doesn't say it from the Vedantin aspect that something is illusory. कुछ एक है ऐसा चीज जो माया की जब हम बात करते हैं वेदांत में, we say that there is a certain nature of reality as we know it in this world, which is illusory.
It's about,
right?
the dualism versus the singularity.
The singularity of sorts.
That's where,
yes, yeah.
from a practical point of view, that actually brings me to the question for you about the oneness. Since you are all about the Oneness Foundation and what we understand, I know these concepts are in the real world. How many of us are even delving into the depths of aspects of what we just heard here? So bringing you into the picture now, talking about the concept of oneness, because we do not realize that when we say Atman or the self, we're looking at 8 billion Atmans. Then how do we look at the commonality and the oneness between them? Because I believe, and you believe through your book which I've read, that until we are one, there won't be peace. And in the relational perspective also, that oneness is important. So how about you introduce us to that aspect of oneness, which is what so much of your work has gone into.
Thank you, Dr. Batra. Hello. Thank you, Dr. Batra. I'm continuing with Dr. Majumdar. The physics. First of all, we have to understand the spirituality is nothing else. This is extended science. We have to understand it. Dr. Batra has just told the duality and the singularity. The physics initially was the relative theory. We have just told that Dr. Batra is much more smarter than me. He is much more handsome than me. This is the comparison. But both have the unique characteristic. We are unique. That explained by the quantum physics. The journey from the relativity theory to the quantum. The Newton to Einstein is the duality to oneness.
That people know that these two boys are from the physics background. So we're already a little worried about their degree of smartness, because a lot of what they talk we don't understand. But I just wanted to specify both of them are from physics, and they're here talking about something which we define as so intangible. So interesting. Please go on. And another point I wanted to add about we are all unique. Okay, imagine each one of us are unique. So imagine how common we all are and how same we are, that each one is unique. So we're actually the same.
Then including you, Dr. Batra. Everyone is unique, and that is why you are leading us.
No, I'm leading you because I'm the woman and women always lead. So I made that very clear to them.
Yeah. That is why we are just believing Mother Nature. And this is the journey from Newton to Einstein. And the oneness. I just want to know, just want to hear from your end. Anyone, just say, what is your dharma? आपका धर्म क्या है?
Love, kindness.
No, आप अभी बताओगे कोई हिंदू, someone
हाँ,
maybe.
उस तरह का.
कोई बताए, आप मैम बताओ, आपका धर्म क्या है? Yeah, anyone. Hindu. Yeah.
Now you know Sanatan.
Yeah, Sanatan, Vedic, whatever. Someone may say Islam, someone may say Christianity. But actually, dharma ये है ही नहीं. श्रीमद् भगवद गीता का एक श्लोक है, समत्वम योग उच्यते. समत्वम योग थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो गया क्या?
Very deep. There's oneness and darkness. Yes. Yeah. But keep talking. We can hear you really well.
तो समत्वम योग उच्यते जब आता है, जहाँ पर समभाव में आप योग की तरफ बढ़ते हैं. एंड धर्म आज से 50 years बैक कुछ और था, हिंदू था, आज सनातन हो गया, कुछ दिन में वैदिक हो जाएगा. या आज से 500 साल पहले कुछ और था, 1500 साल पहले कुछ और था. बट धर्म सत्य है, सत्य कभी चेंज नहीं होता, बदलता नहीं. लेकिन यहाँ हम लोग हर कुछ दिनों के बाद बदल देते हैं, तो ये धर्म नहीं हो सकता।
वर्जन्स ऑफ सत्य और वर्जन्स ऑफ रियलिटी होते हैं।
हम इसको थोड़ा सा और एक्सप्लेन करें। क्या होता है ना कि अपने सुविधा से हम लोग सोशल स्टेटस के लिए अपने पॉलिटिकल माने रिलीजियस प्रैक्टिसेस में पॉलिटिक्स सबसे ज़्यादा है, जिसके कारण हम लोग धर्म का नामकरण करते हैं और एक धर्म गुरु बना देते हैं, या किसी को मसीहा बना देते हैं, या किसी को कुछ और। अल्टीमेट जो है हमारे गॉड, ईश्वर, अल्लाह, जिनको भी हम नाम दें, उनके अलावा कोई भी नहीं है जो हमको ज्ञान देता है। आज अगर हम यहाँ बोल रहे हैं तो उनके द्वारा बोल रहे हैं, हमारे पास ज्ञान नहीं है। ज्ञान की गंगा वहाँ से प्रवाहित होती है। तो सत्य जो है वो केवल एक ही है, हमारा धर्म, और वो है योग। आप जिस भी फिलॉसफी में चले जाए, आज से 5000 साल पहले चले जाए, मजुमदार साहब AI लेकर आए, 5000 साल के बाद बात हो, धर्म एक ही होगा, वो योग का। हमारा जन्म हुआ है, हमको अपने ईश्वर से मिलना है, और इसके अलावा कुछ भी नहीं। यहाँ वननेस का मतलब ही है कि आपको अपने ईश्वर के अलावा बाकी किसी भी रास्ते पे नहीं चलना है। ये जो सारी जो धर्म की बात करते हैं, दीज आर द प्रैक्टिसेस टू अचीव योर गोल, दैट इज योग। योग को प्राप्त करने के लिए हमारी अलग अलग रास्ते हो सकते हैं। दीज आर द प्रैक्टिसेस, नॉट धर्म। यही वर्ड को हम लोगों को सबसे पहले समझना होगा। हमारा धर्म क्या है? तो श्रीमद् भगवद गीता बताया कि समत्वम योग उच्यते, योग ही हमारा धर्म, अपने ईश्वर से मिलना है। और वननेस फिलॉसफी यही बताता है, ईश्वर से मिलना मतलब मेरे और मेरे ईश्वर में कोई भेद नहीं, वो वन हो। दिस इज द्वैतवाद टू अद्वैतवाद। जब बोला गया एको ब्रह्म द्वितीय नास्ति, ये अद्वैतवाद हो गया। जब बोला गया ब्रह्म सत्यम जगत सत्यम, ये द्वैतवाद हो गया। यहाँ पर क्या है, हम लोग दो डिफरेंट पैरामीटर बोलते हैं कि दो अलग अलग रास्ते हैं, दो अलग अलग नहीं है। एक 10th क्लास है जहाँ पर हमको साइंस, आर्ट्स, कॉमर्स, बाकी सारे सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ने हैं। दिस इज कॉल्ड द्वैतवाद, जहाँ पर एको जगत सत्यम एंड ब्रह्म सत्यम। अगर हम लोग बात करते हैं, अगर जगत को सत्य नहीं करेंगे तो भूखे पेट न भजन होए गोपाला। हम लोग खाली पेट भजन भी नहीं कर सकते, मंदिर भी नहीं जाएंगे, भूख लगेगी तो पहले चोरी करेंगे। तो कंसियसनेस वहीं खत्म हो जाता है जिस क्षण हमारे पास इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस शुरू हो जाता है।
नहीं तो यू नो दैट्स वेयर वी गो इवन इनटू मास्लोज हायरार्की कि हम सब अपना अपना रास्ता ढूंढते हैं। कभी रास्ता अलग होता है, जैसे यू नो अलग अलग धर्मों का रास्ता अलग हो, which actually will
one point here, yeah. So actually, the point he made about truth itself, right? We have in Bharat we say Satyameva Jayate, right? हमारे मुख में ही है, सत्य की ही जीत होती है। पर ये सत्य क्या है? ये जो प्रश्न है, this is a very interesting and important question, because सत्य और truth is often very strange to understand. It is very paradox. English में एक word है paradoxical, माने ऐसा चीज जो अलग अलग विपरीत दिशा में एक तरह से संकेत देती है, पर वो है एक ही चीज का अलग अलग भाग एक तरह से, राइट? तो ऋग्वेद में जैसे जानते हैं, तो फॉर इंस्टेंस इन साइंस एज वेल, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट फिजिक्स और वी टॉक अबाउट अद्वैत वेदांत फॉर इंस्टेंस, और इवन ऋग्वेद में भी जब हम नासत्य सुख की बात करते हैं, देयर इज अ होल एस्पेक्ट व्हिच सेज दैट दिस इज बियॉन्ड एग्जिस्टेंस एंड नॉन एग्जिस्टेंस इटसेल्फ, right? One of my next kind of works is, the title is very catchy, my publishers have made it very catchy, which is The Universe is Pranking Us, right? That there is no absolute concept of truth beyond a point, right? Even in terms of the laws, in terms of the symmetries and order that we see, and that is exactly what हमारे भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा में भी अलग अलग जगहों में, उपनिषद में, ऋग्वेद में, बहुत जगहों में देखा जाता है basically. So I just wanted to highlight this aspect, which is very important to understand when we talk about truth itself.
On a simpler perspective, it's more like unity and diversity, which where I am reminded of Manhar's book, which is talking of a range of gods. You know, literally there's like a full variety, guys. Come and choose who you want, because he has enlightened me to so many gods that I didn't even know about. You know, I mean, so all of these are gods. अरे इसकी भी पूजा होती है, you know. So there we're talking of the diversity, and in so many places, for example, an Adivasi god, we didn't even know about them, but who worships whom in some corner of the world, because when we're all in crisis, we're turning to someone different. So coming to him I would want to ask him that in a world where there are different rituals, different religions, different practices, different deities, different varieties of forms of even of Lord Krishna, there would be just so many forms. So, given that our reality, the virtuality, superficialism of it, it's just we are enlightened. It's just gotten bright. Okay, so given that, flashlight on karni, I am happy without them. So given that diversity, how do you think that we can use that in our lives, because we get so lost in the sort of superficiality of these things because there's just so much diversity. So what would you say, who should we turn to in our times of need, since that's when most of the people turn to God? So where do you think the gods fit in our everyday life?
So, just to give a brief about my book, before I answer that question from that perspective, see, primarily what I did, I tried to categorize all the gods. Like, so many gods are there. There are Vedic god, Puranic god, tutelary gods, and lot of gods we have already forgotten with a period of time, which were worshipped till 18th century. So, I tried to categorize these gods. And when I was doing this research, what I found, most of these Vedic literatures, or we say Puranic literatures, or, epics and all stories, Puranas and everything, the primarily concept behind it revolves around karma, dharma, or we can say, something like divine justice altogether. So the primarily core concept revolves around that, and if we try to see, this is somewhere deeply rooted within us, or even I will not say deeply rooted, somewhere rooted within us, and we try to follow the same in today's life. So definitely diversity is there, to be honest with you, and I do agree there is so much crisis as well, so many challenges in today's life, everything, but somewhere we are deeply rooted with that, and we try to fulfill, try to do the goodliness whatever best possible, by some or the other way, by even so many in today's social media, if we talk about, we see, so many people are listening to religious podcast, or we say people are going to pilgrimage, all those things are happening. So somehow we are related with this, from this diversity perspective and from these ancient scriptures which we are getting from our...
The point you've mentioned somewhere in your book, the Jeev, Karma and Atma. Yes. Right? So that is again linking action and the self.
Self.
So
yes.
A little more elaboration on that, because what if we were not taught? I was also enlightened, besides the light coming now, but besides that I was enlightened reading your book. What if we don't read your book? Then where does God and godliness and goodness come from? What is your view or your take on that?
See, even though we don't read our book or something like that, what I feel like, something, which is within our hearts, which we want to fulfill. Someone I will give a very simple example. Some time back, there was a Mahakumbh happened, millions of people took the bath and did a, dip in river Holy Ganga, just to, fulfill something like that. Definitely.
But that's because they have heard that it is holy.
Yeah.
Right?
River is
so
holy.
That is why all religions are different and everyone does something different. So there I believe we come back to oneness in a way that everyone in the world, whether they are taught or not, if we are taught oneness over and above all religions, I guess, would you like to elaborate more on that about awareness? Because awakening, awareness, achievement, the first section where you've highlighted all these A's.
Basically, what happened? First, anything happens started with the faith. Faith in anyone, anything. In my opinion, this is the guru element. Maybe guru, this mic is also becomes your guru. When you started faithing in that, faith develop your devotion. And devotion takes to you surrender. Like in the scriptures, Prahlad has surrendered about Vishnu. And that what happens? From the Khamba,
emerges.
The Narsimha avatar has just come down. Similarly, in the case of Eklavya in Mahabharata, have you seen? Through one statue of Dronacharya, he started learning archery and he becomes master.
It's faith, yeah. The reality,
This
and
is-
that's
this
where
is- yeah.
it can't be tangible.
So
it's
religion
intangible.
and practices complete depends on your faith. If you are start faithing, you know one God is worshipping like Sitla Mata. Have you heard? Yeah, Sitla
Yeah.
Mata. You know what is their statue says? हाथ में एक झाड़ू है and उनका वाहन गधा है. As.
Safai.
हम लोग इसको बड़ा इंसल्टिंग करते हैं अगर कोई किसी को गधे पर बैठाना, बट इंसल्ट. Yeah. This is
The goddess of
happens at the time of
smallpox.
Mahamari in 1930.
That was the smallpox
Yeah,
time.
and Gadha is the symbol for the not smallpox. That time, this is Haja, plague. Yeah, plague.
Cholera
So,
then.
yeah.
I think cholera. Haven't you
Cholera.
mentioned?
Yeah. Plague.
You mentioned
So
it in your
this happens effect on Gadha, the ass. That is why the symbol of that, and the jharu in her hand because of the cleanness.
Safai.
So and thereafter started faith on that,
Cleanliness is next
and
to
now
godliness.
she becomes a goddess.
Is that where cleanliness is next to godliness comes from? Probably.
Yeah, always.
There's
That
just
is-
so many of these concepts we can link together.
that is why in our Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Yam and Niyam is there, where the cleanness of your hygiene and your body.
From a personal level to a spiritual level.
And for Yam, your cleanness of your mind.
Mind, yeah.
You are the mind person. The mind. Like one word is the aste. Aste is the where you have to declare about the, if I just learn something from Dr. Batra, I have to declare that this is from Dr. Batra. Credit given. This is because चोरी नहीं करो, अपने knowledge का भी उसका credit दे दो.
Thank
So
you.
these are the mind, yam, niyam, thereafter asan and pranayam, pratyahar and all these things, dharana, dhyan and samadhi.
That's the yoga basically,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Because
not
we are all
yoga.
about yoga and the
This is
sutras.
for the preparation for the yoga.
Correct. The Yoga Sutra.
Yeah. So Patanjali Yoga Sutra where yam and niyam. So hygiene is everywhere.
Correct.
Cleanness is required. The basic thing about that in yam and niyam.
That's where the man saf comes from.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
So
that is why.
that's, yeah. So if again we go from back to Mr. Science over here, the big physics guy. So coming to the illusion of separation, can you enlighten us a little more about entanglement and the role in anxiety? These are concepts a lot of us, including me, are not so well abreast of. So what can you tell us about that? Like for an everyday life, what sort of a tool can we use to talk of entanglement, anxiety, and the concepts that you have studied?
Right. So before that, I'd like to be a little disruptive here in terms of going against a few things that were mentioned, and just because I think that, for one, unity in diversity is often trivialized and simplified. Unity in diversity does not mean toleration only, right? Unity in diversity means acceptance of that truth as truth itself.
One is a cognition, the other one is a behavior.
Is a behavior, right? So there's a difference between cognition and behavior, right? And it is highly non-trivial, because if you say that something neither exists nor not exists, what do you even mean by that, right? Can you make sense of it, right? So it is beyond those constructs altogether, essentially, right? So that is one. Secondly, with all due respect, I think there is a recent work of mine which has been published by Motilal Banarsi Das, which is called The Logic of Ish. So we always have been told that God has to be approached through faith alone, right? Or faith is the preeminent aspect, which I agree with, right, to a large extent. But there is a whole tradition of Indian knowledge systems called Nyay. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. Navya Nyay Vaisheshik, right? So in that, we have this aspect that even with your cognition, for instance, your rationale, your reasoning, understanding the way in which nature works, for that matter, one can understand different aspects of symmetries, of order, of how we go beyond the laws as we see it at times, right? So the whole book is around that, and I would be happy to discuss going ahead. But coming back to your point about interconnectedness and non-separation, inseparability, I think it not only applies at the physical level, but also at the level of meta heuristics, if you will, or the conceptual level as well, right? Why I say that, you mentioned that I am Mr. Science, but I would like to highlight that in India, in Bharat, right, we never quite had those silos a while back, right? There was these ideas of categorization, right? कि आप है वैज्ञानिक, right? आप है कुछ economics के कुछ हैं, right? आप साहित्यकार हैं, and हम ऐसे करके division कर देंगे society में, right? And आप उसी तक रहिएगा, right? Now the thing is, I would like to kind of highlight this as a major point that I very deeply believe in, right? That it never is quite in these silos that we have the exchange or the generation of knowledge and the exchange thereof, right? So the whole concept of why society is so struck with strife, with violence, with hostility is primarily also because of this siloing of various kind of ideas, and this idea that we are a system and there is something not us, essentially, right? There is a separation, a wall that we construct between us versus them, as I mentioned. And entanglement, as it is, I would like to highlight one thing here. I've often seen TED Talks where people say entanglement is basically Advaitin non-separability, right? बहुत सारे हैं जो science and spirituality को एक साथ ले आने की कोशिश करते हैं. But we have to be very careful in that. We have to understand that there is a certain resonance for sure, right? But it is not quite the same in many respects, right? So when we say entanglement, entanglement is basically the connection of properties of particles in physics, essentially. And when we are talking about Advaitin non-separability, yeah, interconnectedness, it is at the level of identity formation, at the level of the entity itself that we are talking about, right? So it's a much more fundamental level that we are talking about there. And therefore, I often see this simplified connecting of the dots, a kind of trivialization of both the paradigms.
That's
so to say,
where
essentially,
heuristics comes, right? You
That's
just
where
want to
heuristics comes in,
oversimplify.
and we have to kind of,
And so we are science, we are scientific, and yet, the transcending beyond time, transcending beyond form, that's where the hardcore, all the gods come into place, because we've not met any of them, we've not seen any of them. I mean, if we have, then you end up in my clinic and I give you medication if you've seen God. But at the same time, we're hoping that all of us are enlightened by the ideation and the idea and the learning of God. So in terms of this transcendence, let me ask you this question. How do you connect this transcendence to the real world? Because you've also spoken about transcending time and transcending space. And, sayings from the Rig Veda, and both of you all actually, that similarity is there. And, but I've seen it somewhere in your book also. So the different, from the Shaivism, Vaishnavism and Shaktiism, the concepts that you've put in. So how does that relate to the scientific world? For the real world of people who don't understand these very deep concepts, and we just want the practical aspects of it. So can you identify these three for us and just tell us the three, from Shiv, Shakti and
Yeah, so see, if we talk about Shiv, Shakti, or even the, yantras which we use all around from these perspective, so they are different manifestations. Like what I have tried to elaborate in my book from that perspective, when you are doing Shakti, or similarly, I'm not sure. Similarly, for example, we are worshipping. So, when we are worshipping Lord Shiva, or different manifestations of Shiva, different manifestations of Shiva. So, different manifestations are worshipped for the different purpose altogether. If I understood your question correctly, if I may say, and for different purpose, like Mahalingam and all those.
But we don't know when we are doing one of these three, right? That's what I'm saying. The Shiva, Shakti, and the Vaishnava. How do people see the difference and apply them in the real world?
See, primarily based on my understanding, might be I could be wrong because I have limited, from that perspective. But if they are follower of Shiva or Shakti, or from the part of India, or Vaishnavism, or from that perspective, 80-70% people do worship Vaishnavism, or different, when Lord appeared or reincarnated on earth from the different, what we say, Kali and Shakti and all together. So different forms from that perspective. So they are inheriting that. That is my understanding. I could be wrong, might be, and depends from that perspective. Might be you want to add something?
He would elaborate a bit.
Basically, Vaishnavism, Shivism, every ism is made by human. First, we have to understand what is spirituality. Spirituality is beyond body. I am asking to anyone, Dr. Batra even, who are you?
There are many answers to that, right? Again, it's relative.
Yeah, but this body you are sitting here is you, or the soul inside you is you?
Well, ideally, the soul is what defines the body and what makes me.
In
but
simple way, I'm
multiple
just continuing. Yeah,
definitions.
in simple way, the body is belonging to me. This is body, and this is three-dimensional thing. Here the
Tangible.
two, yeah,
This is tangible.
and the soul is intangible. The two things are here. Three-dimensional thing we can anubhav, the word, जो
You
हम
can
लोग
touch, you can
experience,
see, you
and
can, all the senses will be stimulated by the five senses.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the soul, you can't do any of those five.
Yeah, so beyond that, we have to start feeling. When sometimes in everyone's life, when you are just in trouble or any time, you just go start to believe in anyone, start praying. You are start crying also. Maybe tears.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they call it an emotional
या
release.
कभी आपको ऐसा लगता हो कुछ इमोशनल हो गया, that time, या कहीं किसी जगह गए, वहाँ पर आपको एक different अनुभूति होती है. अनुभूति is feeling, not अनुभव.
Experience.
And you can't speak because उसके बारे में these are the unspeakable thing. आप बता नहीं सकते हो. मेरे फ्रेंड जो शिव पर इतनी बड़ी बात लिखे हैं, जिन्होंने शिव के बारे में बताया गया, निजंग निर्गुणंग निर्विकल्पंग निरीहंग चिदाकाश माकाश वासंग भजेहंग. निजंग मने जिनका कोई अल्टरनेट नहीं है, वो कंप्लीट है अपने में. वी ह्यूमन आर नॉट कंप्लीट. हमारे मेरे बदले वो बोलेंगे, उनके
We
बदले
aspire to be though.
या
Just
अब आई एम कमिंग टू द क्वेश्चन. यू नो शिव इज द अघोड़ी, एवरीवन नोज. अभी और अघोड़ी, या यू नो, और वाराणसी जाइए, माँ कर्णिका घाट पे बड़े बड़े जटाधारी और भस्म लगा के बैठे हैं. वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दीज आर अघोड़ीज, बट एक्चुअली दीज आर द एक्सटर्नल अपीयरेंस. हु इज द रियल अघोड़ी? द फर्स्ट अघोड़ी वाज शिवा, पार्वती, जिन्होंने विज्ञान भैरव तंत्र के माध्यम से, उन्होंने अपने सूत्राज के अध्ययन से शिवत्व को प्राप्त किया था. शिवत्व इज ए स्टेट, नॉट अ पर्सन, नॉट अ ह्यूमन. दिस इज स्टेट, कॉन्शसनेस का एक स्टेट है जिसको शिवा ने प्राप्त किया. तो शक्ति शिवत्व को प्राप्त कर ली तो वहाँ पर इनसेपरेबल दोनों हो जाते हैं. तो शिविज्म एंड शक्तिज्म का यहाँ पर कॉन्सेप्ट खत्म हो जाता है. सिमिलरली आफ्टर शक्ति, someone who has achieved that level is Krishna. आपने उनके लाइफ में देखा हो, अघोड़ी का मतलब है एक्सेप्टेंस ऑफ ऑल इन देयर रूट वे. मूल रूप में जैसे भी हैं उनको एक्सेप्ट करना. कृष्ण के लाइफ में कुछ भी नन एक्सेप्टेंस नहीं था. उनके लाइफ में जब लोग तारीफ किया, उन्होंने मुस्कुराकर एक्सेप्ट किया, और गांधारी ने श्राप दिया, उन्होंने मुस्कुराकर एक्सेप्ट किया.
That's the samah shatrau cha mitre
Yeah.
cha tatha manapamanayo. So it's
दिस
all
इज कॉल्ड द
about
समत्वम भाव, जहां पर आप दोनों स्टेट में एक
to
जैसे हो.
translate it to a practical
तो
perspective.
ये
when
वैष्णव मत और शिव मत इज द रिलीजियस हमारा डिफरेंस पैदा करने के लिए पॉलिटिकली बनाया गया.
correct, but
दोनों
that's what I'm
कोई
saying, on a
डिफरेंट
real
नहीं है.
life-
कॉन्शसनेस एंड स्पिरिचुअलिटी वर्ल्ड में कोई इज्म नहीं है. एवरी इंडिविजुअल हैव देयर ओन इज्म. आपको मेरी कॉपी नहीं करनी, हमको आपकी कॉपी नहीं
8 billion
करनी.
isms, and that's the point that in the real world we're going to
एंड इन द रियल वर्ल्ड, इसमें हम थोड़ा सा कंटिन्यू करें. मे बी सचिन सर को अगर बोले कि आप माला लेकर जपो, वो कनेक्ट कर पाएंगे क्या? मेरा क्वेश्चन है. सचिन सर को बोले माला लेकर जपो मंदिर में, वो कनेक्ट कर पाएंगे क्या? उनको मैदान पर भेजो बैट लेकर, वो कनेक्ट कर लेंगे.
That is his form of worship maybe, and maybe he
This
says the
is-
name of
yeah.
some god before he bats, but
Yeah,
we don't
yeah.
know that. That is why it is so individual.
So
and
I'm continuing. So everyone have to search your own connecting point, and this is your ism.
every phone has a different charger. You know, if you try to fit it in, it just won't fit. You know, that's where, on a practical perspective, when I met a couple yesterday arguing with each other, talking to both of them individually, I keep reminding them I'm not a lawyer, I'm a doctor, so I'm not here to take sides. I'm on the side of the relationship. Accept I tell the lady, if he's giving you some negativity, just absorb it like a sponge, just keep it there. It's going to go off, it's going to evaporate. You've not truly absorbed it. So that is where acceptance comes in. I accept your negativity, but I will not give it back to you. Or I accept whatever has happened to me with a samabhav, and I will not react negatively. If that is how we live, that's how that our existence becomes. That is really true spirituality beyond all the complex physics and the complex spiritual discussions that we have. So
Yeah,
I'd
exactly.
close, nice discussion with, with the three boys here, and now we're happy to have questions from you. The best question gets a prize, and who decides that? I decide that. Okay. The best question gets a prize. So basically, the question that goes above my head will be the best question, because I have to feel challenged. Go on, please. Don't be scared. Ask. There's no worst question and there's no punishment.
Hello, my name is Nishraya. So there is a certain concept of Ishta Devta. So again, I mean, हम बात कर रहे थे कि faith की and then conditioning. कि faith सिर्फ conditioning से ही आता है, and then he talked about न्याय. तो how do you, मतलब what is the concept of Ishta Devta and how do you get to that stage, or is the concept of Ishta Devta not there?
श्रेया
Nishraya.
मिस श्रेया, बेटा ऐसा है, इष्ट देवता जब आप सोचते हो, आपका जब फर्स्ट फीलिंग जब आता है, ये डिपेंड करता है आपके कंडीशनिंग में, आपके सोशल अवेयरनेस में, और आप जहाँ पर जन्म ली हो. अगर कोई इस्लामिक होगा तो उसके लिए मे बी इमाम हुसैन होंगे, मौला अली होंगे, अल्लाह होंगे, अलग होंगे. आप अगर एक हिंदू वैदिक परिवार में हो, महाराष्ट्र में हो, तो गणपति हो जाएंगे, और अगर आप बंगाल में हो तो काली हो जाएंगे. ये कंप्लीट मैन मेड है. स्पिरिचुअलिटी में इष्ट देवता का यम नियम के लिए कर्म कांड में नाम आता है, लेकिन स्पिरिचुअलिटी में सिर्फ ईश्वर के अलावा और कोई नहीं होता. वननेस, नथिंग एल्स. तो इष्ट देवता अगर सेलेक्ट करना है जहाँ आपका सरेंडर हो, जिनके प्रति जो भी आपकी कंडीशनिंग और इन्फॉर्मेशन हो, जहाँ आपका बिलीव है, बस वहाँ से शुरू हो जाओ, बाद में वो ख़त्म हो जाएगा.
So just to answer, because you asked about Nyaya as well, I think it's about projections, right? In Vedanta, we often say that there are various ways in which the fundamental reality is projected and is present in our world that we see. So, for instance, Trik Shaiv Darshan में, थोड़ा वेदांत से अगर हट के, there are 36 तत्व कहे जाते हैं जो कि परम शिवा से आते हैं. और मेरे मित्र ने यहाँ बोला कि शिव जी ने उस स्टेट को पाया, बट त्रिका शैविज्म में वो नहीं कहा जाता है. त्रिका शैविज्म में कहा जाता है वो स्टेट खुद ही Paramashiva hai. The state itself is Paramashiva, right? And there are different principles, if you will, and projections in certain other paradigms, which come from that fundamental reality and which are presented for more accessibility, आप एक तरह से कह सकते हैं. जैसा कि उन्होंने कहा कि एक तरह से faith का जो interface है एक तरह से, वो हम इष्ट देवता के रूप में मानते हैं, पूजते हैं उन्हें, right? And different conditionings obviously have a role to play in that as well. Yeah, just to answer that.
Thank you. One more thing is that मतलब ईश्वर का जो आपने कॉन्सेप्ट बोला कि हाँ that is the highest form I think of consciousness, right? And how do you justify जो कुल देवता होते हैं, मैंने एक पर्सनली देखा है वो जहाँ पे वो मतलब उनके अंदर एक सर्टन एनर्जी आती है. So how do you justify that and where do you place it in the whole levels of consciousness or Ishwar? How do you place that?
See, Kul Devta, Ishta Devta, like generally how I will say it and how I have written in my book, I will tell you from that perspective, not from very much from the spirituality, but suppose I am from a family, you know, and I am, my forefathers or family एक पूजा करती है, like what he was saying, you are a part of Bengal, or like I am from Rajasthan, you know, someone will be worshipping Khatu Shyam or someone like that, you think from that. So उनके घर में वो कुल देवता की पूजा चली आई है, they must be doing some puja, 11 or whatever it may be, depending upon the Hindu calendar or whatever. So they keep following that, like that is from the Kul Devta and Ishta Devta perspective, like which we are following, like. if I would be able to answer.
Just one point here. So we know that karma, for instance, prarabdha, sanchita karma, there are many aspects in which karma also follows through, right? So we have this concept that we inherit and bring from our past different kinds of samskaras, different kinds of, karma itself, right? So even benediction, जो हम कहते हैं, जब हमें किसी देवता का एक तरह से grace होता है, right? That also comes through. So when we say kula, right, it has to do with that lineage of sorts that comes forth in that way, and therefore earlier you used to have guardians of different places and families, right? और हम इसको बहुत महत्व देते थे पहले, right? Unfortunately today, in fact back in the day when you used to have construction, right, or you used to have different kinds of projects in a certain area, you used to first do the pujan to them to kind of, satiate them, to satisfy their demands, and then we used to go ahead with whatever we were going ahead with. But today we have wanton industrialization, we have so many other aspects that are going forth. I think it's also a commentary on how we have become quite insensitive to those other aspects, even if we were not to go to the spiritual side, which I think was so intricately linked to our tradition, to our culture itself, which we have somewhere lost out on, essentially. Yeah.
I'd like to add one point there about spirituality and culture and tradition as a thought, and spirituality and culture and tradition as a behavior, because sometimes they're so different. So I was pretty young when I visited Japan, and there were huge gallons and drums of beer in all of the temples, because all the Japanese gods, you offer them beer. Classic it is, you have to offer them beer, and in some Pahari regions, as you mentioned. So that becomes a faith, right? And we would stay away from alcohol because that is anti-God according to so many. So at the end, it really is all about the faith and about the tradition which has been passed down. It's not genetic, the way it is passed down. It is learned behavior. So then again, we come to the theories of the mind of how much of nature and how much of nurture. I have enough of extremely God-fearing, we call it, when we say good people not engaging in negative activities, but they say we just don't like to pray to any God, but they do have a belief in some faith. So faith, I think, is the master of everything. If you have faith, I think you can win anything. The remaining are all different paths to the one. There is the one, and maybe that is what we all eventually aspire to achieve.
एक relevant question है. During this Kumbh Mela, we have so many Naga sadhus coming over there in thousands, but after that they just vanish. What is the mystery behind that?
Basically, this is complete a political situation. Naga sadhu is coming. Actually, they are believing in the Naga Panth. Maximum, this is very controversial statement I am making here. Lot of them are the criminals, escapist from the family. Normally, we are believing you stay in the society, believe in the family system, and do your spiritual work. They are the escapists who are just not taking the responsibility of the family and society, and they are just going beyond. But Naga Panth is the complete spiritual thing. But in Mahakumbh they are coming. I am not believing they are Naga Panth peoples. That is where they are just gone beyond.
Yeah. I think, so I would respectfully like to agree to disagree with my friend here, right? I wouldn't make it such a generalized statement as he has, of course. And there were many folds and many akhadas. In fact, I have been associated with some of the groups which were prominently there in the Kumbh Mela itself. I would say that that particular question, of course, has to do with the socio-politics of it and the organization of that particular event. But it's very interesting. I was doing a study, historical study, back in the day when India was not even independent, right? And for quite a few centuries, there used to be a high degree of self-organization, if you will, right? And there used to be these internal social ways in which mobilization would happen, and to a large extent to, in a very coherent manner, right? In a very cohesive, coherent manner. And then obviously it was taken over by the government of India, and today we have it the way we have it, right? So, but again, I wouldn't agree with that aspect, which is that, they're escapists. The whole paradigm is premised on this idea that you are disruptive in a fundamental way, of course, right? You're going against the normal trend, the norm of society itself. And that is because you're going beyond the constructs, beyond that level in which human beings otherwise exist in, right? So it's an intentional kind of discarding of sorts of that. Yeah.
Right. So if I understand this right, some of you on the panel are kind of agreed that these deities that we talk about can be understood as perhaps archetypes or projections that you can kind of connect to, and it makes it more accessible. These concepts make it accessible, spirituality, or it makes it accessible and digestible to the common man, let's just say. How does this work in real life, in real world scenarios, where you are kind of connecting to one specific deity at one particular point of time and then moving on to perhaps another? So where do you draw the distinctions? I think the host, ma'am, asked a question about that how do you draw the distinctions between the different, let's just say, projections or manifestations of these gods?
Okay, that's a very good question actually, because so we have this aspect of Kundalini, if you will, right? I mean, you know about the energy centers, the chakras. You know about the aspect that Shabda Brahman is a fundamental aspect of nature itself, just to go with the spiritual way to look at what you just asked, right? So there are ways in which there are associated bij, mantra, syllables, there are certain kind of vibrations, if you will, with which you can very fundamentally look at how to associate, if you will, with the devtas, to even the projections of energy, so to say, right? Now, to your other question about going across different Ishta Devtas, I don't see a problem in that. I mean, what is the problem exactly? You're fleeting, is it?
No. I wouldn't say it's fleeting. I would say that
then you do have perturbative aspects in life itself. You're not always constant, right? I mean, change is the only constant.
And fair enough, but how can you tell that what do I need at this point? I guess it's sort of like a lyrical and oral tradition, so I kind of agree with you that goes with...
sometimes intangible is better than tangible.
No.
Because that's the whole point. Someone living in Greece has not heard of Ganesha and is not worshipping Ganesha. So it becomes awareness, and the thing about fleeting, we sometimes fleet from life partners and jobs and homes, and this is my dream home to this is my dream partner, this is my dream God. So, is somewhere you're talking about faith, right, in each of these?
Just a second. I'm not concerned about the fleeting nature of it. I'm concerned about how to know at what you specifically need at that point of time in your life.
Can I give a very physicist answer to that? So there's something known as a natural frequency. Okay, a natural frequency, if you will, where the system is more stable and it kind of is resilient to, if you will, perturbations or disturbances, right? So in a way, I would say my answer to that question would be that you yourself gauge the natural frequencies, if you will, and resonate with it at various points in time, right?